Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jay the Great here and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we have another video by King Bullet, and as you can tell the title, this is the strongest Genjutsu in Naruto. So folks, this was a special requested video and this topic is definitely interesting. So throughout the illustrious history of Naruto, there have been many famous Genjutsu that have been used throughout the timeline of Naruto, right? We have Itachi Tsukuyomi, of course, probably the most famous, arguably, the Infinite Tsukuyomi in the War Arc. And of course, even auditory genjutsu such as Jiraiya's when he fought Pain in the Rain Village. So there are definitely many genjutsu out there that are famous. And then there's more subtle genjutsu, like more generic genjutsus that are used by Sharingan users, like Obito using it on Yagura, Itachi using his finger genjutsu, or using genjutsu against Sasuke. So there are many genjutsu out there, from base, generic, commonly used ones to legendary ones, like the ones I just listed. So I'm assuming King Bullet's going to be ranking the genjutsu in Naruto, and I'm actually very intrigued to see how he ranks these genjutsu and what the foundations for his claims are. So this should be interesting. But before we begin, anything that's greatly appreciated, hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy man and you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time screen. Let's see what King Bullet says today.
What sets Naruto apart from other shonen manga is his uniqueness in abilities and moves that ninja possess. Ninja can summon meteors from the sky, raise the dead, teleport great distances, but these abilities are all categorized into three primary classes, that being ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. But today I'm specifically going to be talking about genjutsu alone, ranking what I believe to be the 10 best genjutsu, so no ninjutsu, no taijutsu.
Alright.
All genjutsu incorporates yin release, but some use both yin and yang release, so it can be classified as both genjutsu and ninjutsu. I'm gonna be including them as well. I'm gonna rank these genjutsu based off concept, usefulness, and lore. So it is somewhat subjective, but I'll mainly be ranking them based on power. So let's get right into this. Number 10 is a Death Mirage, or Hell Viewing, whatever you want to call it. We see this genjutsu as early as episode 25, used by Kakashi. His genjutsu reveals the target's deepest fear, kind of like that wardrobe in Harry Potter. For example, Ron's fear was spiders, and that's exactly what he sees. It's kind of like that. This fear can take the form of a nightmare, like the death of a loved one, or straight take the shape of a darkest fear.
We haven't seen that genjutsu in a long time, clearly. This was in part 1.
Death. She was so shocked and horrified that she passed out. So what's most useful about this technique is that the user doesn't need to know what the target's fear is exactly, but Jutsu just figures it out and seeks it on its own, and it can leave the target too traumatized to escape the Jutsu by releasing. While this is a pretty overpowered genjutsu, if a target can recognize that their fear is just an illusion, then it's pretty useless, then they can release out of it. However, that's easier said than done. This makes this jutsu very effective against people who are inexperienced. Number 9, the Bringer of Darkness Genjutsu.
Of course.
This Genjutsu is famous among the legendary Senju clan that causes the target to see nothing but black, as if a veil of blackness had been thrown over them, taking away their ability to see. This Genjutsu makes the opponent completely vulnerable to attack, since all light is stolen away from them according to the second data book. This was first seen in Naruto when used by reanimated Hashirama on the 3rd Hokage. However, although this jutsu is formidable, it does have its weaknesses. Those caught in a genjutsu can still access their senses, picking up on the user's scent, chakra, and can hear them. For example, using a sharpened sense, Hiruzen could defend himself against a reanimated Hokage by picking up on his energy and being able to smell him. This jutsu was created in order to counter the Uchiha, so even being able to sense chakra is unlikely. Although this jutsu is very useful against somebody who doesn't have great senses other than eyesight, it wouldn't be that great against somebody who does have heightened senses. Somebody like Marvel's Daredevil. However, it's not every day you come across somebody like that, so it's pretty useful at least against the majority of people.
Agreed.
Number 8. The Izunami. The Izunami is an illusion that can be applied to reality, so it's very real. So it's not just all in your head. It affects the universe to a certain degree, all of reality. The Izunami is a forbidden Sharingan jutsu that records the target's actions and physical sensations. It then traps him in an infinite loop between two recorded scenes. To escape his genjutsu, the victim has to accept themselves and their fate. According to Itachi, the Izunami is a genjutsu that decides one's fate. Itachi utilized the Izunami on Kabuto to force him to re-evaluate his actions and accept his punishment. Historically, this jutsu was used to reprimand fellow Uchiha who abused the Izunami's counterpart, the Izunagi, created to punish those who manipulate time. And that leads us on to number 7. As you can
Before we go to number 7, what I want to say about the Izunami as far as a criticism is that it is a tough genjutsu to set up, right? You gotta take these mental pictures And those are the prerequisites to implement and execute this Genjutsu, right? So Itachi had to battle Sage Mode Kabuto for a considerable amount of time to meet those prerequisites, right? To implement the Izunami. It's not an easy Genjutsu to implement and execute. You can even argue if you're fighting someone that's physically superior to you, you might not even be able to set it up because you won't be able to meet those prerequisites or live long enough to do so. So that's a huge flaw with the Izunami. It's obviously a very useful one once you do successfully execute it, but it's not one of the most, I would say, convenient Genjutsus to use. It's not one of the most practical. In fact, it's one of the most difficult to implement, I would argue. So let's continue.
Number 7 is the Izunagi. The Izunagi is a broken ability that grants the user the option to change their destiny and manipulate time. It's performed with the Sharingan. The user applies illusion to reality, just like the Izunami, giving the user total control over what happens while the jutsu is active. During battles where defeat isn't an option, it's activated by making the rabbit, boar, and ram hand seals while the Sharingan is active. From there, the jutsu erases any harmful reality to the user for a brief moment and then replaces it with a reality in favor of the user, helping the user solve complicated situations. The timeline for the jutsu, or the duration, kind of depends on the user's capability and power. For example, Danzo, who transplanted 10 Sharingan into his arm, can activate the jutsu for more than 1 minute for each eye, which would make him invincible for 10 minutes at least. So when he was cornered several times by Sasuke Susanoo, he invalidated his death many times by use of the Izunagi. It is a dangerous jutsu that makes the user practically invincible, but the user also risks blindness, meaning it's not impossible to always go blind from using this jutsu, it's just very likely you will, making this a very powerful and costly jutsu, which technically any Sharingan user can learn. It only takes 3 hand signs. Now we can talk about number 6, which is a very interesting pick and one of my favorite Genjutsus throughout the entire Naruto series, Yakumo's Genjutsu. Yakuma is a filler character, but she has an unbelievable Genjutsu ability. She became Kurenai's student to gain control over her powers, but they were later sealed under order of the 3rd Hokage because of how dangerous they are. She later sought revenge against Kurenai, nearly destroying Konoha in the process. Yakuma uses paint on canvas to cast her Genjutsu over a wide range, and could even extend it over the entirety of Konoha. Her clan has a broken ability to turn Genjutsu into reality, and Yakuma's illusions were very real. They could even physically kill her opponents, despite only being a typical Genjutsu, which are usually sensory hallucinations. So imagine a larger scale Genjutsu, they're far more deadly. In her illusion, she could create entire galaxies, burn her opponents by tricking them into feeling as if they were burning. But surprisingly, she isn't the only one capable of doing something like that, and that interestingly moves us on to our next pick. Number 5, and you all knew it was coming, the Tsukuyomi. One of the most powerful Genjutsu in existence. The Tsukuyomi was used by Itachi Uchiha to trap and torture his victims in an illusionary universe, which is infinite. In this world, Itachi can control the victim's perception of time, making seconds feel like years. We only truly witnessed his true power when using this jutsu during his battle with Kakashi in part 1, where he made him experience excruciating torture for 3 days. Although in reality, all of his torture had passed within only a few seconds. Although powerful, the jutsu can be broken by possessing another Sharingan that is powerful enough to break it. Although his illusions aren't technically real, because they don't incorporate yang release, they have very real effects, like hospitalizing Kakashi and even killing on some occasions. In the novels, Itachi made Izumi live out her entire lifetime in just a picosecond, which ultimately killed her because she couldn't process that much information. He essentially becomes God in his own universe that he creates. He's even managed to create infinite clones of himself, which cause his opponent's brain to overload, causing them to die. He can even cast them over insects like bees, and not just a few bees, like a hive of bees. So it's pretty wide scale as well. And this moves us on to number 4, and that is the Kotomatsukami. It's a legendary technique that subtly invades the individual's mind, creating false experiences and leading them to believe that they're making decisions based on their own free will. The user exerts influence over their opponent, manipulating their actions without them even being aware of it. Belonging to Shisui Uchiha, this ability was greatly sought after, so much so that Danzo attacked Shisui and stole one of his eyes. The Sharingan that Danzo stole from Shisui was used to manipulate Mifune in order to secretly dominate the conference of the 5 Kage later in Naruto Shippuden. Shisui gifted his other eye to Itachi, knowing that he would keep it safe and one day use it to protect the village. This would come true as Itachi used it and programmed it with the instruction to protect Konoha. The reason I place it above the Tsukuyomi is because it's considered the strongest Genjutsu, at least according to the 4th data book. They might be overhyping it, but I definitely think the lore supports that it is more powerful than at least the typical Tsukuyomi. It being considered the strongest just means it was considered the strongest at the time. Does that mean he's stronger than other Genjutsu higher on this list? Well, no, simply because of contradicting statements and lore. So now we can move on to the God tier Genjutsu. Number 3 is a limited Tsukuyomi. In Road to Ninja, Naruto the movie, Obito uses the power of the 7-tailed beasts to create this parallel universe housed in the crystal ball. He then uses this crystal ball to transport Naruto and Sakura into this parallel universe. This Genjutsu is a prototype for the infinite Tsukuyomi. It was shaped by both Naruto's desire to have parents and Sakura's desire to not have parents. Obito explains that this alternate reality is meant to be this exact replica of a real universe, but distortions were created when Naruto and Sakura were transported into it. Similar to how ripples are created when a stone hits the surface of water. We all know that it's not a typical Genjutsu because Obito can use the crystal ball to look into it and also travel in and out of it. Meaning the limited Tsukuyomi isn't just
keep in mind it's not canon,
world that exists in somebody's head, but also a real space, so a real parallel universe, rather than just a dream. To break free of the limited Tsukuyomi and escape to the original universe, the target must shatter the crystal ball from either the outside or the inside, but that's pretty much impossible unless Obito teleports inside of the alternate universe that you're trapped in, making it extremely overpowered. Now surprisingly, number 2, and you guys might have not actually seen this coming, is the Infinite Tsukuyomi. It's considered the ultimate Genjutsu. The Infinite Tsukuyomi is this extremely powerful Rinnegan Genjutsu that's projected onto the moon and traps the entire world in an illusion if a light reaches a target's eyes. It enslaves entire civilizations on different planets in dreams, so that their energy can be drained by the God Tree. This Genjutsu forces a target to live out a dream once their chakra is taken. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be chakra, it can take natural energy as well, since it works on cats. In the anime, some of the dreams that characters had were like Kiba being the Hokage, Hinata dreaming of a world where Neji was still alive, that kind of thing. Only another Rinnegan or an Edo Tensei can resist this Genjutsu, meaning it's pretty much unbeatable. I assume that Edo Tensei can only resist it because it's obviously not their real bodies being affected by it, it's more like the puppets that aren't really alive. So it's kind of like trying to cast a Genjutsu on an object, it's not really gonna work. Those who have fallen into these infinite dreams are enveloped by the roots of a God Tree, which have been expanded across the planet within a mere few seconds by the Jutsu nativity of a world of trees, having their energy being sucked eternally, and being turned into an army of white Setsu. Now the big question is, are there billions of infinite universes created by the infinite Tsukuyomi and are they real? All I can say is we don't really know. You could argue that the limited Tsukuyomi does create real universes and is a prototype for the infinite Tsukuyomi, so they could be real. But the problem is, it might not function the exact same way the limited Tsukuyomi functions. So instead of transporting people inside of a real universe physically, the infinite Tsukuyomi seems to only trap the mind of a target inside of his dreams. However, they could be real universes, and it could be something like dreamwalking like in Doctor Strange, where the target from a parallel universe's mind is possessed by the user. But this is all just speculation, we can't really say for sure. However, without a doubt, at least via law, this is the most powerful. Well, what I mean is the second most powerful. And this moves us on to the most powerful Genjutsu. Now you guys are probably wondering, if the Infinite Tsukuyomi is number 2, what's number 1? Number 1, wait for it, is the creation of all things jutsu. The creation of all things jutsu was a technique possessed by Hagoromo Utsutsuki that allowed him to turn fantasy into reality. You might have heard Obito talk about this to Konan when explaining the Izunagi, because the Izunagi is said to descend from this jutsu. It's also stated on Uchiha's stone tablet that this jutsu can create all things in creation, or all things within the universe, using the two conflicting forces of a universe, the primordial and fundamental forces, the light and the dark, yin and yang. It can turn dreams into reality. Now, just like I said at the beginning of this video, this isn't strictly just a genjutsu, it qualifies as both ninjutsu and genjutsu. The process Hagoromo used is explained to have initially involved the use of his imagination, spiritual energy, which forms the basis of yin and yang jutsu, to create physical forms from nothingness. Then through the application of his vitality and physical energy, which forms the basis of yang chakra, he would breathe life into the resulting creations. The tail beasts were meant to be these creations made from the 10 tails using his jutsu. Basically, just to simplify things, it's meant to be this way better version of the Izunagi, as explained by Obito. The user has control over everything. They can choose any outcome they want, they can create anything, and anything they imagine will just happen. Apparently, it's meant to be the basis for all jutsu, so imagine every jutsu ever created, but rolled into one. It's basically just that. Only a true wielder of a Rinnegan can use this. The Rinnegan even has his infinite depth of power, so it's just limitless potential. So it's not just undeniably the best genjutsu ever, but also the best jutsu in general. Although it's never called the greatest ninjutsu or genjutsu, that's probably because it has this weird classification of both, or even neither. But if you have this jutsu, it basically just makes you a god. Now that should conclude the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Subscribe, like the video. If you want to see more content like this in the future, you can voice your opinion on what you think is the strongest genjutsu or what you think is an underrated genjutsu. Don't forget to check out my other videos, which are links right here, and I'll see you later.
Alright, good video. Alright folks, so there you guys have it. I have to give my thoughts. If we're talking about most useful, I would definitely say the Tsukuyomi, the Izunagi. That one's very useful. It literally gives you another chance, and you basically beat fate, right? And again, it's not like the Izunami where there's these tough prerequisites that have to be met. You simply just activate the Izunagi, and you got another chance to defeat your opponent. All right, that's what Danzo spammed. Unfortunately, he was just inferior. He couldn't win anyway, right, against Sasuke. So, but it is very useful when you're fighting an opponent relative to you or weaker, and you mess up. Let's say you get a lethal blow to the head or something like that that kills you off or heavily damages you. With the Izunagi, you got another chance. You basically have extra lives, right? So it's a very useful one. Another one that I never really thought about was the very first one he listed. I think it was called the Death Mirage. That's an interesting one. We really never see it again, at least from my understanding. Kakashi uses it on Sakura, traumatizes her, makes her think Sasuke's dead, and it seems very useful. However, I might argue that if you do it against someone that has strong conviction, right, isn't naive, it might not work, right? Someone like Madara, would it really work against someone that has conviction like that? Or do you want to presuppose that it makes anybody fear what they see before their eyes, right? From my understanding, it simply shows you something you don't want to see, right? A fear of yours. But my argument would be for people with stronger conviction, it might not work. Exactly. Right? People that aren't naive, people that are strong-willed, someone like Madara, someone like that, I don't think that would work. But it is useful against the right opponents, I would say. And I think King Bullet pointed that out as well. Against the right opponents, it is very useful. The Bringer of Darkness, the same thing. If you're fighting someone that doesn't have very good senses and is not a sensory ninja themselves, it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with that, right? They're going to be lost in the darkness, right? Hence the Bringer of Darkness. Hiruzen has senses. He has good smell. He's a Hokage level threat, so he clearly can work his way around a Genjutsu of that caliber. Now the Tsukuyomi, I think, in my opinion, is higher than where King Bullet placed it. It's an extremely effective Genjutsu. You're basically dead if you get caught on it, right? All things are under the control of the user. Once you're caught in it, you're at the user's mercy, and they can make it as painful and as excruciating as they please. They can torture someone like Itachi to Kakashi, or they can actually give you a good experience like Kakashi did to his girlfriend during the Uchiha Massacre in one of the novels, right? Put her through a Genjutsu that appeared to be 80 years, but was really picoseconds, if I'm not mistaken. She lived 80 years from her perspective in mere picoseconds, which are, I believe, a billionth or a trillionth of a second, which is an unimaginable small amount of time. Right? An unimaginable small amount of time. So that one is a very useful and powerful Genjutsu, I'd argue. Now, compared to the Kodo, some people might argue the Kodo's stronger. That's fine. I just think those two are very powerful. And now the number one spot, I kind of get why he has that at number one. I mean, it's in the name itself, the creation of all things, right? So I'm not mad at that placement and having the infinite Tsukuyomi behind it. Not mad at it at all. I think this was a solid list, and it's with some interesting facts thrown out in between, right, while explaining and building the foundations for his claims. And this was a very interesting video. It was an entertaining and interesting video with a lot of informative aspects and a lot of obscure facts that people don't know, right? Like the first Genjutsu, I really never even thought about in a long time, right? I haven't really thought about it in a long, long time. So, good video by King Bullet. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think are some of the strongest Genjutsu in the entire Naruto verse? What do you think is the strongest, right? And what are some of the most useful? Which ones have the most lore? Those are some questions that I'd be curious to see your answers to. So again, let me know in the comment section below. But it's going to wrap it up, folks, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is Jet the Great signing out. Peace.